Welcome to the Robertson and Easterling podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Matt Easterling.
And I'm Craig Robertson. Matt and I are Mississippi divorce attorneys who work with real people with real life struggles. Helping them identify and achieve their goals is not only our job, it's our passion.
Even the thought of divorce is deeply personal and emotional for both sides, and you cannot ignore those feelings if you want to be healthy.
In our podcast, you'll hear stories from people who are further along in their journey. You will also learn from our network of professionals who would teach you about wellness despite your circumstances.
So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. Everything is going to be okay. What you're about to hear is going to help. Today's guest is Tara Mills. She is an amazing licensed professional counselor with the Shepherd staff. She has worked for 15 years, specializing in child, adolescent, and adult issues. Those include abuse, trauma, post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, grief, and loss. Throughout the episode, you're going to hear some of Tara's personal do's and don'ts for parents in dealing with their children as they navigate divorce, the importance of therapy for children who are suffering their parents' divorce, and how divorce has touched her life personally.
So I first met Tara Mills about 10 years ago. She was actually the counselor for my client's kids. And unfortunately, we had to interact in that process. And I've just grown to know and love Tara and appreciate the work that not only that she does, that the Shepherd staff counseling group does. And Tara has graciously agreed to be with us here in today's episode. And so, Tara, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you for having me. I love being here.
Tara, have you done a podcast before?
I have not.
And how long have you been working as a counselor?
Well, I've been a counselor for over 15 years. I've been at Shepherd staff 13.
Okay. And you specialized in children the whole way through?
I have.
So, Tara, let's talk about that. Obviously, our podcast is for people who are faced with family conflict. Something's going wrong at home. And inevitably, the children get caught in the crossfire of that. Tell me a little bit about the process that you go through when a child is referred to you.
So when a child is referred to me, what I do is I try to meet with the parents first to get background, to introduce myself, to go over confidentiality and answer any questions that they have. Then I bring the child in typically and meet with the child, half a session and get to know them. I work the first several sessions establishing safety and rapport, because if I don't have that, then a child will not open up to me. And that is extremely important in this process.
All right. So, Tara, obviously, sometimes parents are aligned when they refer a child to you, but oftentimes we're in a situation where parents aren't, where parents are in conflict and parents aren't agreeing. How does that impact the initial process that you do with a child?
Typically, when parents are not aligned, the child has a harder time opening up, which means the child has a harder time trusting therapy in the process and does not feel safe in my office. So it takes a lot longer for a child to open up, typically if the parents are not aligned.
Oftentimes, parents that are going through a divorce, they allow their feelings for one another to cloud their communication with their children. What would be some of the best ways that they could prevent that?
I think putting the child first, meaning whatever resentments, whatever issues they have between each other, they need to work on that separately with a different therapist. They need to come together for this child, be able to talk to the therapist about different issues that they have, parenting-wise or with the child. It is so important that they put those issues aside, because it will cloud therapy and it will make it a lot messier and harder to clean up.
Well, how does therapy work? I'm a family law attorney. I know 20 counselors in the Jackson metropolitan area, but not everybody does. It's a foreign concept to some folks. So what does therapy look like specifically for a child?
So therapy for a child is extremely important, especially with a huge transition as divorce. What it does is it allows the child to tell their story. It allows the child to describe what this big change transition is like for them. It allows the child to talk about their thoughts and their feelings linked to their behaviors. It's a place that they can come where they feel safe and know that mom, dad, no one will know what they talk about. It is an amazing thing because children, we can use all different things for children. Play, art. I have an outside area that we go sit outside and use sidewalk chalk. We talk. Sometimes they'll, show me their dance at school, or they'll show me, something that they do in theater at school.
So, Terry, you've been making TikToks with kids? Is that
absolutely not. Now, that's a whole nother issue.
Listen,
TikTok is a whole nother issue.
We were at a party last night, and my daughter saw this high school kid, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Mom." It was like she had seen Justin Bieber. It was like, he has like 1 million followers on TikTok. I was like...
But in all seriousness, I do have to engage. It is very important for me to engage in what is important to the child. So there's oftentimes that they want to show me a YouTube or a TikTok or something to that effect. And I absolutely let them do that because it helps me understand their world.
So what is going on in a child's world? So parents are divorcing. There's 1,000 reasons why parents might be divorcing. What are the typical reactions of a child whose parents are divorcing?
With a child, what I see oftentimes is it manifests in a way that are physical, like headaches, stomach aches, nervousness. They are frightened about something that they've never been frightened before. Those are the ways that it comes out. Also, withdrawal from their friends, withdrawal from the world. You've got anxiousness, panic, OCD. These are all ways and symptoms that children can show that something's going on with them.
Well, and just to hopefully, put our listeners at ease, it is possible for parents to get divorced and for the children to move through that process in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so would you say that the way that the parents communicate to the children is the most important part of that aspect?
I think it's one of the most important parts. I think another very important part is that the child sees that they can come together without fighting. They can come together for school plays, school performances, even a therapy session without fighting, because children typically internalize their family arguing, their parents arguing. Vicki Lansky, it's one of my favorite books. It's in the car. She says there's no such thing as a no-fault divorce with kids. They blame themselves or they blame a parent.
Well, I know that I feel like I'm constantly telling clients that their child should never have to feel like they need permission to love both parents. And when they are so pitted against one another, it's really hard. And they're usually telling each side what they want to hear, or at least I feel like they are. Do you encounter that?
I do. I encounter that often. I think that children have to figure out where to put that blame. And so if they put it on themselves, oftentimes they're either going to internalize it, like I said, they may have stomach aches or headaches, or they will externalize it and act out, whether that's rebellion, whether that's OCD. And if they put that blame on a parent, then oftentimes they don't want to be around that parent. They put distance with that parent, or they are very angry and act out on that parent.
But parents aren't always healthy, and parents sometimes do stupid things, and those stupid things affect their family. And so I love to think that everyone could be collaborative when it comes to the well-being and health of their children, but unfortunately, that's not our reality, is it?
It is not. I think adults mess up more than kids.
I feel like I see parental alienation to some degree in almost every case that we deal with. It's very rare that you've got people that are able to completely separate their failing marriage with their parenting their children. Is there any way that people can identify that that they are being a bad influence to their children?
That's a great question, and it is very prevalent. I agree. I think one of the biggest ways is therapy, because there's an accountability there. I meet with the parents or a parent, pretty often, not to break the confidentiality of a child, but to check in with them as a parent. And they ask me questions, and I tell them what I think is the right move for the child. And that's very helpful because there's a groundedness there and an accountability.
Yeah, I've been telling people for years that, the legal system is really bad at trying to parent kids. And what I choose to whisper in my child's ear when I put him or her to bed at night, it's really between us. And I can tell them, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you did an amazing job today. Or I could also tell them that, your daddy just disappointed us all today, And so, we as parents make those choices. And, I like to think that people generally want what's best for their kids, but unfortunately, sometimes the yuckiness of everyday life gets in the way of it.
This is a tricky issue. One of the main things that I try to educate parents about when they come in for the first session is do not talk negatively about your ex-spouse or your soon-to-be ex-spouse. If you don't think that it's going to impact your relationship with your child right now, it may not right now, but it will bite you later. I mean, parents, that is sabotaging therapy. It's sabotaging their safe place when they pit the other, when they pit the child against the other parent, when they try to make themselves look wonderful and excellent as a parent, and they make the other one look horrible. That's one of the worst things you can do in this process of divorce, because oftentimes the child is going to believe you because they want to believe you. So they're confused. They love both parents, but they've got this one parent saying negative things about the other parent that they love, and they don't know how to feel. So it's an extremely confusing experience, and they don't know what to do.
When parents do things like that, not only are they damaging their child's relationship with their other parent, they often unknowingly, or when you say something bad about the other parent, you are basically telling that child that part of them is bad too, because they are made up of those two parents. And while it may not manifest itself right then, you mentioned earlier, it may come back to bite you later. Those are the things that are one of the things that's going to bite you, because you're telling your kid that they're basically half bad.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
So, Tara, Matt and I are professional talkers. Sometimes we're good at it, sometimes we're bad at it. But you're a professional listener. And educate we stubborn men, lawyers, and parents in general about active listening. What is good listening? How does that work?
I would love to educate about active listening.
I need to take notes about this part.
Everybody does. So what I teach parents and children, active listening is simply trying to shut down your own thoughts and truly listening to that person. That also means that you are not coming up with what you want to say in that process. You are listening. And then after that person is finished speaking, you tell that person what you heard. And sometimes it takes repeating back exactly what the person said until you grasp how to actively listen.
So what I heard you say was...
Very good. That's a good start. That's a good start. Yes.
I need to be focusing on the speaker and not necessarily my needs to communicate to the person with whom I am having the conversation.
Yes. If you are thinking about what you want to say, then you're not really listening to that person.
You know, I've noticed this thing. I've been practicing law long enough now to where some of the cases I did early in my career, these kids were really little, 4, 5, 6. And I've seen these kids grow up. I've seen, 8-year-olds that were the subject of a nasty custody dispute become, 25, 26-year-olds. So how are children affected by parental conflict at different ages?
So divorce is a trauma, and trauma affects kids, and divorce affects kids differently at each developmental stage of their life. So that can look different in all different stages of their life. I also have seen that kids will be aligned with one parent during one developmental stage and then may flip-flop over to the other parent the next developmental stage. So that's why it is so important to co-parent effectively and consistently so you both can have a good, healthy relationship with your child.
Hey guys, I'm your new friend Cassie. I'm a paralegal and the client care coordinator at Robertson and Easterling. Are things not working out for you at home? I am so sorry. What you need right now is honest feedback and wise counsel about how the legal system works in Mississippi and how it could impact your future. Click on the link on our website or just give me a call. After a meeting with one of our attorneys, you'll feel like the weight of the world has been lifted from your shoulders and you'll have guidance about what you need to do next. When you're ready to talk, just give me a call. I would love to talk to you. The fact that you even spoke to me is totally confidential. Until then, take care and enjoy the second half of our show.
Often we run into situations where kids, whether it be because they've become aligned against one parent or just because, they want to do something else that they want to do, they maybe don't want to go over to their dad's house for visitation or go see their mom for this part of the summer. How would you suggest that parents deal with those situations when you want to see your child, but they are actively voicing a resistance towards coming?
I think if it's any other stage other than being a teenager and they want to be with their friends, which is really, really normal, I would say maybe have a third party figure out what the block is. Because there's something going on if the child continues to be resistant in seeing the other parent. I have had that situation several times, and I've had that parent come in with the child and kind of try to work through what it was that was going on, and it was very helpful.
Tara, what's the key? I mean, people get divorced, unfortunately. We don't promote divorce at our firm. We help people who make that choice for themselves. But divorce happens.
Absolutely.
And what's the key? I mean, if you could sit down a auditorium full of parents who are going through a divorce and you could tell them one thing that they would remember, what would that thing be?
No pressure.
No pressure.
Put your own issues aside. Put resentments with your ex or soon to be ex aside. Become healthy yourself. A child is only as healthy as the parents are.
So how true is this? I've been saying it. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's true. When you're on an airplane and they're going through the safety protocol that nobody listens to, but they do the piece where if there's trouble, and there probably won't be trouble, but if there's trouble, put your oxygen mask on first and then help the person you're traveling with. What, if anything, does that mean with regard to parents during the process of divorce?
Oftentimes, one of the first questions I will ask, if I know that a divorce is occurring or it just was finalized or the process is just beginning, I will ask the parents if they are seeing a therapist, who they are seeing, and that I will probably have them in my office to give them some feedback parenting-wise as to how to be the healthiest parent, because they must be healthy if they expect that from their kids.
So, Tara, obviously you deal with children and parents that are experiencing divorce all the time. Has divorce ever touched your life personally?
Yes, my parents divorced when I was 4, and Dad moved several hours away. And so my mom, back in the 80s, the typical custody arrangement was you see your father every other weekend and then maybe longer during the holidays. And so that's how it went. So my mom was a single mom, and it was hard. Dad, I was not really close to Dad, and I think how it impacted me was that I wanted so hard to prove to Dad that I was worthy of his love, of his time, and did not want to get rejected and abandoned again. And so my mom caught the brunt of all the acting out because I was trying so hard to feel loved by my dad. And so I can see that now, backing up and having done a lot of therapy on my own, but it was an extremely confusing time.
At what point in your life were you introduced to the process of therapy?
So my mom put me in therapy at the age of 8, and that's when she remarried. My dad remarried much earlier on. And the way it manifested within me was constant headaches. And my mom just was she didn't know what to do. So she took me I remember, his name was Mr. Tarpley, and took me to a therapist. And I remember this visual. He looked at me and said, "Tara, the inside of you is like a box. And if you fill it and fill it and fill it and fill it, what's going to end up happening? It's going to explode. So this is for you to empty out that box so you're not exploding." So fast forward, several sessions later, my mom calls him and says, "What have you done with my child? She is so angry. She's walking around saying how angry she is all the time." And he simply said, "Good, it's working. She's getting it out rather than internalizing it."
And why is that so important, Tara?
Internalization of emotions can cause headaches, stomach aches, panic, much worse.
Well, it's almost like that box that you were referencing is bursting at the seams, and that's why it's hurting. It's just like there's pulsating. Everything's trying to get out because it doesn't have any more room.
That's exactly right. And I still use that with clients.
Empty the box.
Empty that box. In fact, there are sometimes I'll get a Kleenex box and we'll decorate it, and then they'll start putting inside that box what's in their own internal box.
And what kind of things do kids put in their box?
It may start out, "I'm scared of the weather." And then after a little work, it can be, "I don't like my parents fighting," or "They're still fighting and they're divorced," or "I don't want to go over to mom's house or dad's house because the new siblings." I mean, there's so many things that go in their box that they don't talk about unless they've got a safe place.
Yeah, and that's what therapy provides.
That's what therapy provides.
Tara, we've been talking a lot about things you see going on with children through your practice. Do you have, like a specific list of like do's and don'ts or tips for parents out there who are navigating a divorce?
Yes, I have a lot of things to say. I'm going to hit just a couple of things that I think are extremely important. The first is communicate age appropriate with your child about the divorce. If you need help with that, talk to your attorney or a therapist. Your relationship with your ex is a separate focus. It may be very important for you to get help to be able to separate that relationship from the parenting relationship. Conflict resolution. If it doesn't happen in your marriage, then try very hard to establish that with your child and model it. They are going to need it. Listen and actively listen. Do not bash the other parent. Honesty is great, but it needs to be age appropriate, and it will bite you later if you manipulate your child by influencing them to believe your agenda. If you are having trouble feeling heard, get help for this. Do not sabotage therapy. Kids need time and space and love and boundaries. Part of effective co-parenting is consistent boundaries.
Explain to our listeners, what are boundaries? I mean, from a therapy sense.
Boundaries would be, I'm going to give you an example. Bedtime is 9:00. There are times that one parent may say, think in their head, I'm going to let Johnny stay up later because he's had a hard time with this divorce. That's overcompensating. Boundaries must be consistent. Rules and boundaries must be consistent for a child to feel safe. That doesn't mean that a child can't talk to a parent about them wanting the boundaries or rules changed. But there are certain boundaries and rules that need to stay in place and consistent through the process of divorce.
So, I mean, consistency is what boundaries is about with kids.
Yes, consistency.
Because boundaries, when we speak of boundaries with another adult, sometimes that takes on a different tone.
Mm-hmm. Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend is just one of the best books out there. There's a Boundaries with Kids book that's really good too. And that would be a great tool for parents as they navigate co-parenting.
I wish we had just an hour more to talk to you, Tara. Just so great, rich information. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
But let's wrap up with this. How do parents sabotage the process? Because anybody who's listening and paying attention realizes the value that comes when kids get to empty the box. But how do we parents screw that up?
I think one way is forcing themselves to come into session. That happens. And I put boundaries down. I always ask the child first if they would be okay with it. And if they're not okay with it, I try to work them to be okay with it, because the end goal is for children to be able to communicate with their parents effectively and vice versa. Another way that sabotage has happened frequently is when I'm subpoenaed for court.
Why are you looking at me like that, Tara, when you say that?
This is so important. This is so important. Would you want your parents knowing your first sexual experience? Would you want your parents knowing the first time you smoked weed or when you had a drink? No. But guess what? Kids in divorce, if I'm subpoenaed and my records are subpoenaed, guess what that means? Both sides know everything, and that's not fair, and that is an injustice to the child.
What do we do then? What? All right, help me out. So we hear you, our listeners hear you. So what do we do? Because I think most parents who are reasonably healthy want what's best for their child. What do we do?
I know there are times that a therapist may need to advocate for their client in a custody situation. I realize that. I think there needs to be a way that either the therapist can communicate directly with the judge or give the record sealed to the judge and have a conversation or type a summary that speaks for the child. I think it's just really important to leave that safe place alone.
So what I heard you say is...
You're listening.
I am working. I'm growing. So what I heard you say was, what happens in the therapy room is sacred and it needs to be left there. But there are occasions when the therapist needs to advocate for their client. And when they do that, they need to do so in an effective way to protect that sacred communication, that emptying the box that happens in the therapy room.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Tara, just thank you so much for educating us, for your wisdom, for the work that you do with kids, and we're just really grateful.
And with all that great work that you do, can you tell our audience a little bit about where they can find you so that you can help even more people?
I'm at the Shepherd staff. We have 13 therapists there that are wonderful. And our website is tss1981.com.
And the Shepherd staff doesn't only deal with children, right? There are therapists there that deal with people suffering all sorts of stresses in their life.
Ages 3 and up.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you all very much.
You've been listening to the Robertson and Easterling podcast. Thanks for spending time with us.
We'd love to hear from you if you need our help. You can request a consultation from our website in less than 5 minutes. If you liked our show, please subscribe to our podcast so you'll be one of the first to know when our next episode drops.
Have a great rest of your day, and remember, there's nothing wrong with arming yourself with information. On behalf of Matt and our entire team, thanks for listening.
This podcast is not a substitute for an attorney. All information is provided as a general reference and public service. Listening to this podcast does not create a professional relationship with Robertson and Easterling or any of its attorneys or guests. This podcast may be considered advertising under applicable rules, and free background information is available upon request. For a full disclaimer, please visit our website, www.robertson.ms.